Hello everyone living in cozy apartments and cottages. You might think that this is the only way a person can live, walking the streets to stores and driving to work in a car. However, this is far from the case. You are on Top Facts channel, and today we'll show you the alternative ways of life chosen by people who do not want to mix with society. Some survive in the coldest places on Earth, some find it good under a bridge, while others completely merge into the sewage. I wish you an hour of maximum interest. Enjoy watching. Osima is a volcanic island in the Philippine Sea, and it's one of the most isolated regions of Japan. In a small village, there are 160 people living. The crater of a dormant volcano forms a natural depression, and the surroundings of the steep cliffs and dense vegetation protect the area from winds. People live a simple life in difficult conditions. They rely on fishing and the island's limited resources, using narrow paths and steep stairs. The village has infrastructure, a school, and a post office, with stores. Communication with the outside world is rare. A helicopter arrives once a week, and a cargo ship delivers goods from the mainland. Such isolation preserves the natural beauty of the island and its unique ecosystem, endemic plant species and insects. Despite domestic problems, the islanders have created a friendly, self-sufficient community and do not aspire to return to the major stresses of the modern world. Do you think you would like to escape to an island like this? The Moncell Sea Fort in the United Kingdom are an impressive relic of the Second World War. This monumental project by engineer Guy Menuzel was erected between 1941 and 1942 and played a vital role in coastal defense. The fort successfully repelled air raids, and it was equipped with aircraft guns, radars, and searchlights, with naval fortifications on concrete bases protecting the routes from submarines and mines. The appearance of the forts is menacing even now. In a dilapidated and abandoned state, the fort's towers look like ghosts, left to the mercy of fate. But they still serve as a reminder of how much effort was taken to protect peace and how terrible wars are in all their forms. If you had to live in a settlement almost 1,242 miles from the nearest city, with no airports nearby, and the entire population amounted to 235 people, would you live such a life? Edinburgh of the Seven Seas is the name of this curious place, and it's located on the archipelago of the Tristan da Cunha, which is part of the British Overseas Territories, the island of St. Helena. Even the name itself is remote, not to mention the distance. Most of the local residents are close or distant relatives because they only have 6 last names. To get to the city, it takes 15 days to sail through the raging sea, and if you are lucky, you can reach it in just 6 days on a speedboat. And if not, you'll have to wait a year. To spare you the trouble of shrinking the world map in search of this place, let's point it out. The Tristan da Cunha group of islands lies in the middle of the Atlantic, on the line between Cape Town and Buenos Aires, and are practically impossible to spot. Slab City is a self-governing commune in the California desert, considered the last free place on Earth. It resembles a nuclear disaster site, but is still part of the state with police oversight. During World War II, it hosted a Marine Corps training camp, but in 1956, the military left, leaving only concrete slabs behind. Eventually, a group of hopeless romantics took over this place. It seems that they still like it there. Did you enjoy dungeons in your teenage years? We are now showing you a story where you will remember your thrilling sensations. Right beneath the fashionable gaming halls of Las Vegas, in underground tunnels, people live. Those who have not won at life, had a good job, good luck, or good family. Mostly, those enduring hard times reside there. Many lost jobs during the pandemic. Some came out of prison and had nowhere to go. Others just never found their way in life. Now their everyday reality is a dark labyrinth filled with people and rats. And their main hope is that a sudden rainstorm does not flood out their makeshift homes. What do you think of the contrast? Life in the dark under a city that never sleeps. For the past 22 years, Miguel and Maria and their dog have lived underground in Colombia. They made a home in a former septic tank, a sort of post-apocalyptic bunker. Although the room is smaller than a usual bathroom, where one cannot fully stand up, they managed to fit a bed, a fan, a stove, and even a television. Surely, there are even those who might even envy them. A person without property and permanent address, Terry Gonzalez, owns this home on wheels. What happened in his life? He lost everything except his creative abilities and an old car. Using his ingenuity, he built a cabin on the roof. Here, he and his pets feel comfortable. Well, let them be formally considered homeless. In fact, this is not the case. Look at this building. If you haven't noticed anything unusual, let me point it out. This isn't just an apartment building. This is the city of Whittier, Alaska. Under one roof, you'll find everything needed for the life of 300 people: a gym, supermarket, hotel, post office, city hall, even a church. So the residents of Whittier sometimes don't need to go outside, except maybe to work. Although there's also a separate tunnel for that, open from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock. The direction of traffic changes every half hour, so there are even traffic jams. If you're late, you wait. Could you live several months without leaving a single building? Many people call this place their home. Let me hint again. This building can accommodate almost the entire population of Monaco, which is around 30,000 residents. Do you think you'd have to wait for the elevator for about 4 hours, no less? When we think of Italy, we imagine charming narrow cobblestone streets, whimsical houses, flowers on balconies, and grapes in cozy courtyards. However, can we replicate this pleasant scenario in the noisy megacities where skyscrapers dominate? In fact, we can. In Milan, there are 2 modern residential buildings where tenants enjoy their own hanging gardens on balconies. Even, I would say, mini forests. Multi-story towers are completely covered in plants. This green area is equivalent to a full forest. The only inconvenience, you need to regularly invite a gardener. Otherwise, you might become completely overgrown. Then, you have to call the gamekeepers. Since ancient times, people have learned to cleverly use the materials typical for their region. In Iceland, the architectural heritage of the island consists of sturdy homes built from a mix of peat, stone, and wood. They demonstrate Icelandic ingenuity in adapting to the harsh climate. Peat can withstand sharp winds and frosts, keep heat in winter, provide additional insulation and protection for the home. Everywhere is practicality. Inside, there is a central living area for cooking, sleeping rooms, and pantries for storage. Small windows do not let out the heat. Seamless integration with the landscape provides ecological construction and an attractive view. A lawn on the roof is like a small garden. Admit it, doesn't it kind of remind you of a hobbit dwelling? In the depths of South Australia, there's a very unusual town with a population of about 1,700 residents. Coober Pedy. The region is involved in opal mining, and the town has become famous for its unique underground dwellings. I wouldn't call them dugouts because they are carved into rocky formations, but there's a certain rationale. In summer, the heat here reaches 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Residents ingenuously decided to carve their homes into the slopes of sandstone hills, and the result exceeded expectations. We see apartments with carefully thought-out designs, modern conveniences, and underground facilities such as hotels, churches, and stores. The town's name comes from the Aboriginal term meaning white man's hideout. The name aptly reflects the unique essence of this way of life. Inside, you're greeted with a comfortable temperature of around 75 degrees. No air conditioning needing. There's a saving. In addition to underground amenities, there's a golf course on the surface. If it's too hot during the day, play under the moon. The multinational composition of the town dates back to the discovery of the opal mine. Life has been bustling here since the 1950s. The film industry also did not bypass this unusual place. In the movies Mad Max and Red Planet, we can see the local landscapes and interiors. So, Coober Pedy is one of those non-traditional places to live where people do not balance on the edge, but enjoy life. Remember the last time you were cold? Well, that would seem like a holiday in Miami compared to the place that we're going to now. The village of Oymyakon in Yakutia is recognized as the coldest settlement on the planet. The average temperature in January is minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit, and sometimes it drops to minus 67. This is not just frost that chills to the bone. For comparison, it is 3 times warmer in a freezer. No wonder there are fewer than 500 people living in this tiny little town. Welcome to the abode of Santa Claus, a luxurious ice hotel in northern Sweden. The world's first architectural wonder, recreated every winter by about 50 artists from pristine ice. Huge blocks are used to build the main hall, reception, ice bar, and unique suites. Each suite has an original design, and everything in it, including beds and chairs, is meticulously carved from river water ice. Even the glasses in the bar are made of ice. This project is like a blank canvas for artists. Every year it undergoes new metamorphoses. Imagine staying in the Snow Queen's palace, sleeping in a room with walls made of ice blocks, where platform beds await you with thermal sleeping bags and warm reindeer skins. In spring, when the ice melts, tons of backup material are stored in a production facility with a capacity of over 19,800 cubic feet of ice and more than 35,000 cubic yards of snow, and much more of the water returns to the river. Despite its ephemeral nature, the Ice Hotel has attracted over 1 million visitors per season since its opening. People are drawn by the exquisite design and ice champagne, so the cold heart of the river can inspire love. It is better not to open your mouth unnecessarily here to avoid catching a cold. Yakutsk is officially recognized as the coldest city on the planet. The temperature in eastern Siberia in winter regularly drops below minus 40 degrees Celsius, minus 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is twice as cold as in a freezer. The record lowest temperature ever, minus 60 degrees Celsius, minus 76 degrees Fahrenheit, was recorded on January 2nd, 1951, and it's absolutely mind-boggling. How can people live, study, and work in such temperatures? Here, simply warm clothing is not enough. The city is located approximately 279 miles south of the Arctic Circle, and about 300,000 people live here in the region. Summer also comes here, but it can get as hot as 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit above zero. But imagine what it's like here in winter. Some ordinary things for us are simply impossible. For example, wearing glasses would not work. They would just freeze to your face. Driving is a separate story. The engines of cars of special vehicles must remain in working condition 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If it stalls, it would not be possible to restart until the weather changes. Can you imagine the fuel costs and wear and tear of the car? Well, I suppose you want to buy milk, but be prepared, it's as hard as a brick. Frozen. No storage system will make the refrigerator warmer than the surrounding environment during transport. But these are not the main difficulties. The main difficulties are that in winter, daylight lasts only 4 hours, and in summer, 21. A great place for an eventful life. Frankly, a paradise for storing ice cream. Let's look at one of the strangest and most awkward houses in the world. The Casa do Penedo, in the north of Portugal, was built between 4 huge rocks on a high hill. And although the house was only built in 1972, it looks very primitive. The construction is quite rudimentary inside. There's no electricity, and living here is probably not what everyone dreamt of. Such a strange building that attracts tourists who are thinking about a retreat. The owners were so tired of the intrusive attention that they moved from here. And now, the house hosts as a museum with historical photographs and memorable items. Unfortunately, the house also attracts vandals, which is why bars and even bulletproof windows have already been installed. Villa Girasol, located in northern Italy near Verona, was built in the 1930s not as a model of architectural beauty, but as an innovative construction, the essence being that the house rotates following the sun, precisely like sunflowers do. The architect designed it with a floating mechanism that precisely catches the sun. Why, you might ask? The idea is to harness light for potential health benefits, or perhaps some simply enjoyed reading books in daylight and don't want to move their chair or go to another room. Thus, the house resembles less a flower and more of a space station. But this remarkable construction still functions flawlessly. The cottage turns exactly as needed. This unique place is located in the southern Spanish region of Andalusia, Sentinel de las Bodegas, a beautiful town known as White Village or Pueblo Blanco. All the buildings there are indeed white, as if some architect erected the ensemble all at once. It is charming, and not just the color has earned the town its special fame. Many homes here are embedded into the slopes of cliffs, and under this natural canopy, they are sheltered from the incredible heat. The rock serves as both a roof and an awning from the rains, which are rare but happen. Providing shade and coolness inside the houses, even some parts of the streets are covered with stone shields like a gallery. It's very unusual, but undoubtedly clever and wise. It's a pleasure to wander through these snow-white streets, isn't it? A village with an unpronounceable name, located in China on a cliff at an altitude of 2,624 feet, has become famous in recent years thanks to the internet and has become a pilgrimage site for tourists. Previously, people lived here were so poor that necessity forced them to cling to the cliffs, literally what it means to live on the edge, and the village could only be reached by climbing a bunch of rickety ladders. In 2016, the local government unexpectedly invested a lot of money in this godforsaken village, but here they built a new steel ladder. However, they still have to overcome 8,388 steps, almost 1.86 miles long. The fabulous new ladder costs nearly $150,000, and the path home for villagers has become much safer, and it has also appealed to tourists. Now there are people everywhere with selfie sticks. Imagine you already ascended and forgot your wallet or phone at home. One of the most popular attractions in China, near the city of Datun in Jiangxi province. A man-made structure to 1,500 years old, located 246 feet above ground, at the level of a high-rise building. Every day, a river of pilgrims flows here, and no wonder, it's a unique place in China, where a temple site was built off the cliffs, combining three religious concepts: Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Although the construction appears to be hanging in air, it is nonetheless firmly attached to the cliff by massive oak beams driven into the rock. So far, no one has complained about the creaking or instability of the galleries. Let's hope that many more tourists will visit this famous temple. To reach this magnificent place, a fearless visitor must overcome more than 8,000 steps. It's quite a long way just to peek into the temple at the mountain's top. In the Wuling Mountains in southwest China, in the Sichuan province, here's a unique natural phenomenon. A rock spire split in two halves, known as the Red Cloud Peak, and it supports two small Buddhist temples connected by a bridge across the heavens. The history of the construction dates back over 500 years, and can you imagine how the Buddhists managed to haul building materials all the way up the steep mountain's edge? It remains a mystery to this day, because even bringing your own body and a small backpack up there requires incredible effort. Not long ago, the structures were reinforced with modern materials to withstand strong winds at the height, and of course, is a favorite spot for launching drones, though the wind does not help them either. While you and I don't necessarily have to climb all day to appreciate this incredible creation and enjoy the views of the most incredible temple and pristine nature around. This unique sanctuary was built in Italy at an altitude of more than 1,976 feet above sea level, right by a vertical cliff. The cathedral is located at almost the top of the precipice, and from one side it is definitely well protected, but it's unclear how it was managed to be built on such a narrow rock ledge of the Monte Baldo in the Italian Alps. Originally, this extraordinary place was meant to be a retreat for holy people who wished to withdraw from the world to just be silent. The church itself was built in 1530, and ultimately those wishing to withdraw to be silent for at least a few minutes became much more numerous. Now, anyone can make the pilgrimage here and contemplate divine beauty and union with the mountain landscape. One just needs to climb up a narrow staircase to the only square where the complex, somehow surviving the turbulence of the 20th century, is located. This unusual settlement is located in Cambodia, on the largest freshwater lake in all of Southeast Asia. Lake Sap is a floating home, not only for a huge amount of fish, but also for a settlement with a total population of around 1 million people. Yes, they all live in houseboats on the water surface, and the reason for choosing this place is, well, it's one of the most fishy places on Earth. In Lake Sap, there are up to 200 species of fish, freshwater, and no sharks or crocodiles. The vast area can even conditionally be divided into several populated areas, whereas in one village, 1,000 families live. These people live and work on the lake, and their way of life is somewhat exploited by the tourist industry. Not exactly an ethical practice when your everyday life is regularly intruded upon by gawkers and bright boats, just to see how you live. It makes no difference to the locals. Another question is how they managed to establish the sewer system and the use of drinking water if the lake is the same reservoir. Probably since they've not left it for so many years, they have somehow solved this dilemma as well. Ponte Vecchio in Florence is one of the most visited tourist spots in Italy. In Italian, it simply means Old Bridge, describing the structure itself, whereas before 1218, it was the only bridge in Florence across the Arno River. The current version of the bridge has been standing here since 1345. Let's call it the New Old Bridge, as the original was destroyed during a flood, and a new one had been built in the 14th century. It still stands today, and its territory is filled with houses, which gives this bridge street such an unusual appearance. Indeed, it is a long-standing European city tradition for bridges to always host markets. Here, trading in meats and fish, as well as leather goods, will take place. Convenient, isn't it, to dump waste into the river? But in 1593, the decree was issued according to which only jewelers were allowed to set up their shops on the bridge. A great advantage, as the bridge still remained the only crossing. Interestingly, the bridge was used for private purposes by the rich and powerful Medici dynasty, which ruled the city for generations. Ponte Vecchio served them as a corridor for moving between their palaces. The family would walk through on their own elevated gallery to avoid going down to the street and interacting with society, not seeing the dirty and unkept beggars, and not dirtying their saffron shoes with the manure from the cobblestones. Hallstatt is the name of a picturesque Austrian village, and you might reasonably ask, what is it doing in China? But it is true that there is a Chinese Hallstatt, a precise copy, fully reconstructed in China in the province of Guangdong. Who needed it on the other side of the world, and why? The fact is that China has a habit of amusing itself in this way. A team of architects periodically recreates certain famous and not so famous objects on the scale of an entire settlement. They think not of individual buildings, but of an entire city plan. In various places across the country, full-size copies of such famous structures as the Pyramid of Cheops and the Eiffel Tower have been erected. Venetian canals have been cut, and why not include a lovely Austrian village? The European original has stood in Austria for centuries and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, while the replica was built in 2012, and both places are extremely fairy tale-like. Here, too, people live permanently, and the idea was to successfully sell real estate in this region to those wealthy Chinese who, for various reasons, could not purchase it in Europe. Doesn't it seem to you that people in the past searched for the most inconvenient places on Earth to build their temples, as if they were trying to prove something in such a strange way? Now we'll visit perhaps the most inconvenient and highest places, the whole country of monasteries in Greece, called Meteora. This complex was built many centuries ago on top of giant fingers, outcrops of rocks with epic views of the sea and landscape around. The very word Meteora translates from Greek as between heaven and earth, an extraordinarily fitting name for the 6 active monasteries hanging in the air. Here live several monks or nuns, and the monasteries themselves received the status of a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1988 and remains at the top of tourist charts with the note, "Must visit." So please come to Greece to the holy places. Thanks to drones, this area is experiencing a new renaissance. One can admire their fantastic beauty endlessly. A floating home on the coast of Tofina area in British Columbia, an environmentally clean site with a lake in the forest, and a real bay of freedom. This is the name of an estate project created by the creative couple of artists, Catherine King and Wayne Adams. They have made this eco-oasis their dream home and have been developing it since 1992. There is also an art gallery, a dance floor, a lighthouse, greenhouses, solar panels, and a generator, while everything is painted an unusual color, turquoise and fuchsia. The most creative combination, a bit unusual for the local nature, but very bright. This autonomous farm is independent of any state energy grids, and you can get here from the nearest city by boat in just about 45 minutes. Elay Island is the 3rd largest in the Icelandic archipelago, and it looks like an iron sticking out of the middle of the ocean. Deserted and covered in greenery entirely. Who thought of building a lone house here? Probably the most forlorn house on our list. Out of the way, literally. It looks like a plot from a detective novel, doesn't it? No wonder this place is shrouded in rumors and stories. In reality, it's much more mundane. The island was once considered an excellent place for people obsessed with bird hunting. There's an abundance of a species called puffin, and it gives someone great pleasure to come and shoot them. It sounds terrible, but the mystery of the house is obvious. It is not a secret millionaire's residence, nor a religious hermit's retreat, and it's not owned by singer Bjork. It's simply a hunting lodge, built in 1953 for all nature enthusiasts. Today, this lodge is allowed to be used only by members of the official hunting society, not just anyone from the street who fancies shooting birds. Do you remember the film based on Tolkien's trilogy, The Lord of the Rings? If so, the name Gondor, the White City, and this image will also seem fantastic. But we are now in a real place in Yemen called Al-Jahara. This small town is quite ancient, and there's hardly anything like it in the world. The village was built in the 12th century as a fortification during the Ottoman Empire's occupation, and these multi-story buildings became the first skyscrapers in history. They stand close to each other on the slopes of mountains, and in the lower parts of the buildings, there are no windows. The mini-fortress design in each building was intended to protect from invaders. The very fact the entire complex still stands firm speaks of the construction quality and the power of these ancient fortifications. In the south of Tunisia, there's a settlement unlike any other. It reminds us of the troglodytes cave people. But here, we're not looking at a miserable den, but almost palaces, built not from marble, but from earth. This famous tourist attraction in the town of Matata, located on the very edge of the Sahara Desert, among palm trees and olive groves, was built without stone and wood, from available materials, sand and clay. Its houses are literally dug into the earth and constitute almost a labyrinth, with the centuries of inhabitants of the indigenous people of North Africa. To escape the heat, the houses were practically buried in the earth around a central courtyard with a well, and they contain several small rooms or chambers connected by passageways, stairs, or tunnels. Would you like to live in such a refuge? Write to us in the comments what you think about these constructions. In the depths of the Australian outback, where no one has ventured on a tourist trip for hundreds of years, where there's nothing of interest, just tracts of scorched earth stretching for many miles, and where, apart from snakes, no one lives, there is still one remarkable place, and it's not located on land, but just beneath it. It's a miner's town, and indeed, they live underground. Coober Pedy. This is the name of the mine where opals are extracted. The journey here takes about 8 hours of driving. Many of the town's residents live in homes resembling dugout caves. This way, they manage to stabilize the climate, which fluctuates from freezing cold to scorching sun. Yes, it can't be said that they are uncomfortable. They are quite modern and equipped, full of life, and why not? If people have learned to solve problems, then they must be resourceful, especially if they continue to live in one of Australia's harshest places. In Bucharest, the capital of Romania, hundreds of people live in the sewers, about 1,100 teenagers. These are the children of the underworld, who ended up here due to dire conditions. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Romania's economy also plummeted, leading to more unemployed and poor families whose children started seeking solace in underground culture and finding access to drugs. Many orphanages simply closed, and where do the homeless go if the state just abandons them? Entire generations of teenagers join the ranks of the marginal layers. In these, tunnels under your city, you can find anything from a shelter to a drug den. But they simply have nothing else. And these desperate people are forced to accept terrible living conditions. Only one charitable organization provides them basic medical care, and the government does not care about them. So, as you walk through upper city of Bucharest, remember that not everything is serene, and possibly right under your feet is this underground city of the Forsaken. This former military platform in the North Sea is located about 7.5 miles off the coast of England and proudly calls itself the Small Kingdom, proclaimed as the Principality of Sealand in 1967. The architect of the micronation project, Paddy Roy Bates, was not officially recognized as either a prince or a count, but nevertheless, the platform stands there, rusts, and is intended for his heirs. It was built by the British during World War II, then seized by radio pirates, until it was occupied by Bates. In 1978, he managed to repel an attack by military mercenaries, but Sealand has not received the status of sovereign microstate and is actually in British waters. However, this whole crazy story is reminiscent of a game or a movie plot. Probably not the most convenient place to live. There's no stores nearby, and the landscape is not idyllic. The ocean roars so much that even listening to the radio is not possible. But someone still wanted to live even here. Welcome to Yanji, officially the narrowest city in the world. It's nestled between the embrace of the Tibetan foothills and the stretches along the banks of a river. Though the feeling of parallel universes never leaves you, everything is so strange here. The city's maximum width is 1,312 feet, and the narrowest place is just 98 feet wide. That's 2 basketball courts. How do nearly 500,000 people fit on this patch of land? The thing is, the narrowest city streets stretch out for over 37 miles, which means to drive through it at a decent speed, it would take your car an hour. This house in California stands out not only for its cool futuristic vibe, but also it is literally located in a volcano. Where the building now stands, lava used to flow, and today you can relax on the observation deck and imagine yourself as an astronaut on another planet, where there's no life, but you can breathe freely. If northern Portugal attracts you, look at the kind of housing you can find here. This house plays hide and seek with us. It's camouflaged inside a rock. We don't know who or why it's fit between 4 giant boulders, but the atmosphere inside is unique as well. There's standard furniture, but a concrete sofa would be much more interesting. Imagine your day starting with this breathtaking view. Just the view from a house in the mountains of Italy. This house is located at almost 6,560 feet, and in addition, it's completely alone there. You can only get here by cable car or by a winding mountain trail, but there are no neighbors, no traffic noise, and no loud music. Could you spend a week or two here? Another entity that feels great in solitude, and additionally, it stands on an island. This hunting lodge in Ireland is situated on a fjord. Only a caretaker lives nearby, and there's one workshop. For introverts, a better hotel could not be found. High in the Peruvian Andes, there's a famous place. The city named Larongar is simply exceptional for its diversity. Firstly, it's located at 16,404 feet above sea level, making it the highest settlement on the planet. But the positives end there. People up here constantly experience lack of oxygen. Crimes based on alcohol are a daily routine, and the poverty level is simply off the charts. And yet the city's population of 30,000 people is constantly growing. Are you curious why people continue to live in such conditions? Here's the answer. Everyone here is searching for happiness in the gold mines. People hope to escape poverty. For years, they dance to the tune of local companies and suffer the utterly harsh working conditions. Centeno de las Bodegas in Andalusia is arguably the most unusual Spanish town. It's literally embedded in the rock. Somewhere, a huge boulder has become the wall of a house, and on some streets, it even replaces the ceiling. Buildings are integrated into the steep rocky massif, which saves residents from the relentless heat. Surely it's even cool there at night, and such a roof will protect from winds and storms. The townspeople have settled in well, and the flow of tourists here does not decrease. Considering that in 800 years of existence, not a single building has collapsed. An excellent investment in labor. Amedi is a charming ancient town in Dahuk, province of Iraq. It lies at an altitude of 4,598 feet, and its architecture was planned before our era, when this region was a melting pot of different peoples and civilizations. Amedi is on the UNESCO World Heritage List, and currently about 11,000 people live here beautifully. The city fortress in Shibam in Yemen is often called the Manhattan of the desert. The unique ancient construction plan has been preserved to this day. The city boasts towers made of sun-dried mud bricks, which soar up to 98 feet high and block the horizon. Since the 16th century, the fort, surrounded by a defensive wall with a narrowing winding street, was strategically designed to protect residents from invasions and floods, to save from the scorching sun, and for efficient air circulation. Sun-dried brick helps regulate the temperature inside the dwellings. Even if the tower houses rise to 11 stories, their walls are coated with mud and straw on the outside. The architectural appearance of the city is beautiful, despite being primarily designed for survival in extreme conditions. In 1982, Shibam was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it continues to enchant tourists with its resilience and its grandeur of its buildings. The city of Guadix in Spanish Granada is famous for people still living in caves. True, they're very comfortable and beautiful, but the essence remains the same. You can find them in the city by the white chimneys and the television antennas sticking out of the hills. The happy owners of the cave apartments are called troglodytes, which translates from Greek as living in caves, and they founded their colony in the 8th century, gradually building up 2,000 cave dwellings. So there's nothing offensive about the nickname. And the homes inside the caves are indeed wonderfully arranged, clean and cozy. Plus, they can maintain a comfortable cool temperature all year round, from 64 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. No need for air conditioning, and the sound insulation is excellent. If you want to visit the city, head to the tourist area of Barrio Santiago. There are plenty of cave hotels, and once a year, the community hosts a festival. Favela literally means slums. Homes are piled on top of each other, shots are fired often, the police rarely look in, but everyone admires the breathtaking ocean view. Yes, this is Rio de Janeiro, and although you can walk around in white trousers, before us is the infamous settlement, the most criminal territory of the city. This Chinese village is located on the top of a cliff at an altitude of 2,624 feet. It's gained popularity as a tourist attraction precisely because of its inaccessibility. You might wonder who would want to overcome thousands of vertical steps just to get a glimpse of the impoverished life of the local inhabitants. Moreover, you would have to move along unreliably disheveled ladders. In 2016, thanks to significant government investments, the project truly strengthened. The ladders were replaced with sturdy steel ladders. This, of course, made life on the cliff safer, but despite the improvements, the way home for residents still consists of 2,565 steps over almost 1.86 miles. The modernized labor, costing almost $150,000, not only improved the lives of local residents, but also significantly increased the load. And now there's bustling traffic of tourists with selfie sticks. Katsky Pillar in Georgia is a limestone monolith, on top of which, at a height of 131 feet, there's a small church. It has been known since the 9th century from the records of Prince Vakushti Bagration. Monk Maxim settled here as a hermit. Initially, in the 1990s, one had to climb up a dangerous rope ladder to reach the top. Now it's been replaced with a metal one. Along the premises, there's a small cell, a chapel, a crypt, and a modest wine cellar. However, there are no basic amenities, like running or drinking water. One must go down for it. Nevertheless, the monk grew a small garden and contributed to the restoration of the church and other buildings. Now it's a well-known site of Georgia's religious history. Zhuangkong is a renowned temple complex in China, literally hanging on the edge of a cliff at a height of more than 230 feet. All its stairs and buildings are carved into the rock. It was built in the 5th century AD and had since been a home for monks. Despite gaining the status of the most dangerous building in the world in 2010, the temple attracts crowds of tourists. They flock here as fanatics because this is the only temple that unites 3 denominations: Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. Would you dare to climb a construction that is 1,500 years old? This place emits a unique, fantastical atmosphere. Welcome to Larongar, an impressive city located in eastern Tibet at an altitude of nearly 13,123 feet. This extensive complex, founded in 1980, has turned into the largest Buddhist academy in the world. Imagine, it houses 10,000 monks, nuns, and novices. From these compact houses, stacked like dominoes on the mountain slopes, all clerics ascend daily for education and spiritual practices, only to return home at dusk. Even with the apparent density, this settlement looks very harmonious. The Chinese call this rock the Golden Peak of the Red Cloud. If you go to the Sichuan province in China, the most popular pilgrimage site here is the Shan Temple. You will have to overcome more than 26,247 steps to see this wonder of the world. A unique natural formation, a rocky peak split in two, has been holding 2 small Buddhist temples at its top for more than 500 years. They are connected in the sky by a hanging bridge. The mystery of this place lies not only in the architectural wonder, but also how the ancient Buddhist builders deliver construction materials here, along the sheer vertical cliff. Moreover, strong winds rage at such altitudes, yet the buildings still stand. The temple at the top of the rock attracts drone enthusiasts. Indeed, the views around are breathtaking, despite the gusty wind. So if you don't wish to climb to the top, you can come here with your drone, or just watch this video really carefully. In Greece, near the city of Kalimbaka, at heights over 1,000 feet above sea level, you'll find a uniquely beautiful place, the Meteora Monasteries. Already in the 10th century, the first hermits climbed this daunting peak, and over the following centuries, built 24 monasteries here. Only 6 of them remain active, while the others have turned into picturesque ruins. The active sites become pilgrimage spots and appear in movie scenes, like the Holy Trinity Monastery, where only one monk resides. The monastery was featured in a James Bond movie. Not far from the city of Lagos in Nigeria, which opens onto the southern part of the Atlantic coast, there's a unique area leading to an unconventional way of life. A tiny fishing village has turned into Makoko, the largest floating slum. Ironically, it's called the African Venice. Perhaps, except for the absence of bridges, there is nothing in common between them. Poverty and mortality rates here are alarmingly high. Since the government has not officially recognized the settlement, these people are not quite citizens. They are not entitled to education, medical care, or even drinking water from the state. Not to mention the waste is dumped into the ocean. Various international foundations are fighting to improve life in Makoko, hoping their efforts will be crowned with success. Genvi, an African village on Lake Nakua, the largest water settlement in West Africa, whose history began in the 18th century. Now, 40,000 people live here, and this place definitely resembles an African Venice more. There are water pumps, drinking water, an abundance of fish, and all this life makes it much more attractive. The main issue for the city is electricity. There is none here, except for some wealthy individuals who have acquired generators and solar panels. The floating village of Chong Nis is located on the scenic Lake Tonle Sap in Cambodia and is a well-known tourist attraction. Southeast Asia's largest freshwater lake is very rich in fish. There are about 200 different species here. Isn't that the perfect environment? The unique settlement has about 1,000 families. They live in houseboats and cope well with both daily life and tourist interest. Although fundamental problems such as sewage and drinking water are resolved at a community level, for years, people have been living in balance with the local ecosystem. A rare harmonious coexistence of human society and nature, yet absolutely real. It may seem unconventional to us, but again, only to us. Castro is the capital of the Chilean province of Chile, and a characteristic feature of this coast is the palafitos, houses raised high on stilts along the shore. These elevated dwellings are connected by pedestrian paths and bridges, and such a construction not only helps to park the boats at home, but also to withstand sharp tides. Thus, residents have been reaching their homes since the 19th century when the archipelago was a bustling maritime center. Now every fisherman has a car, but the palafitos remain an integral part of Castro's cultural heritage. Many of them are transformed into boutique hotels, guest houses, and restaurants. Cozy mini palaces with wood stoves. Tourists adore these houses, and if you would want to experience the feeling of safety on the water, come and stay here. Manila, the noisy capital of the Philippines. Under the bridge wrapper of tourist areas hides a harsh reality. In the very heart of the city, under the bridge, there's a district of terrible slums. People live there where it seems impossible just to be. Even judging by this video, it's hard to imagine the living conditions of this community. How can one live under a bridge for so many years, create families and raise children if transport constantly rumbles overhead? The screech of metal structures is heard, but there's no escape from the heat. Lake Titicaca is located at an altitude of almost 13,123 feet above sea level, and people live here too. The Uros, indigenous people, whose name is given to the floating village. It consists of 100 platforms that move freely around the lake. The technology is as old as it is native. Layers of reeds are laid in layers and tied with ropes on eucalyptus poles. Such a structure withstands the weight of a hut, serving for a very long time. You may smile, but along with the archaic and isolated way of life, people here enjoy every convenience. They have small household appliances, a medical center, and a school, which is on a separate platform. In the heat of the desert in the southwest of Peru lies the town of Huaycachina, and it's called the American Oasis. This place is like a fairy tale. The lake in the sands, the huge palms, beautiful houses, and cheerful residents, in whom there are only 100 people, not counting the tens of thousands of visitors each year. Do you think the oasis community lives harmoniously? Santa Cruz is an island in the Caribbean Sea, but essentially it was artificially created. On the compact territory of about 107,000 square feet, about 600 people live. This is one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Moreover, all residents are interconnected by some familial ties. There are no non-indigenous people here. About 100 homes for 600 residents means, on average, families of 6 people live under one roof. And there are, incidentally, only 6 surnames in this community. About a century ago, fishermen began to place their homes on a coral platform and settled in the middle of the ocean to gain freedom and escape from mosquitoes. Such is the legend of the settlement. And it got its name in honor of the white cross on the small Santa Cruz Square, which means Holy Cross. There's a church, a school, stores, and the only restaurant. Houses are painted in joyful colors: lettuce green, banana yellow, and sky blue. Children play in the streets, and adults share homemade food and dance to local music. You'd exclaim, "I wish I lived there." So, our episode has come to an end today. This was a gigantic roundup of the most unusual places where people live. If you like it and want to see something similar, then write to us in the comments. And don't forget to like. Also, you can write the keyword rocket so that I know that you watched the video to the very end. Thank you so much for watching, and subscribe to the channel to watch incredible compilations on the channel Top Facts every 3 days.